Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ScriptRunner Live session here on LinkedIn, and also we stream it on YouTube. And I'm happy to welcome you. And the topic of this session will be how to use ChatGPT, ScriptRunner, and PowerShell and to create and modify scripts with the help of ChatGPT and ScriptRunner. And I'm going to have a few examples. The session is planned to be 20 minutes, and I hope we can stay in this range. That would be the plan. And for those of you who maybe don't know me, just a few words about myself very quickly. Let me just share the screen here. Put that in. That's the wrong one, of course. Here we are. So yeah, I'm with ScriptRunner. I'm using PowerShell quite frequently, I would say, and I'm in this industry for quite a bit. And if you want to get in touch with me, there are several ways of doing that. Via LinkedIn, obviously, Twitter. You'll find my presentations and some scripts on GitHub. And also I have a YouTube channel where, by the way, you find recordings of the PowerShell user group I'm hosting, which is the PowerShell user group Rhein-Neckar. And I will later on, I will also put the contact information into the chat, but maybe why not doing it right away now? So let me just put all the information into the chat. If I find the right window to do that. Here we are. Okay. So yeah, I would be happy to get in touch with you also after this session if you have any questions. All right. So the topic today, as I said, is about ChatGPT, PowerShell, and ScriptRunner. And when we look at the landscape and the things that you hear about ChatGPT, it's the new cool thing, I would say. There are a lot of information out there, and I want to focus on a number of use cases and examples that might be interesting for you, hopefully, so you get some inspiration maybe to go down that path further down, to use it, of course, for general conversations with ChatGPT, but in the particular context here of course, PowerShell. How it can help you to create new scripts, to work with things like regular expressions, which is always fun, right? So, or you want to use it for explaining PowerShell or troubleshooting some codes or modifying existing codes. So that's the things that I will try to demo and to show you in this 20 minutes. And as the first example, let's take a look at the, let's say, default way of using ChatGPT, which is, of course, the website. So let's go there and let's try to see how that can be something already for starting a conversation with ChatGPT about PowerShell, right? So that would be the idea. So let's take a look at, so here we are in the prompt. And okay, what you can ask and communicate with ChatGPT for all kinds of questions, right? And you could say, okay, let's start with something like, show me the top 10 PowerShell commandlets, for example. Let's see. Very easy beginning. Okay, and then here we see we get some information about some commandlets, and we get some info already that, okay, the last knowledge is updated, the data updated until September 2021. So that's the data that ChatGPT is providing here. And okay, so we already get some some information here, some commandlets, and some descriptions, which is okay. So we could say, okay, maybe also show 2 examples for every commandlet. Okay, and then we get already some code that we could copy and start using in our environment. And so that's yeah, a very, very basic starting example of how to use ChatGPT in combination with PowerShell. But of course, you could also say, okay, I need a script to create new Active Directory users, and then it comes up with some code here, and some descriptions, which can be useful right now. So if you're at the beginning stage, you want to see, okay, what happens in this script. So this is a good way, a good starting point. Later on, maybe you would say, okay, I don't need that. I only need the code because that's what I want to use in my script. And as always with ChatGPT, never trust what you get there. You need to test it, and the results may vary. That's my experience. Whenever you do something, oftentimes, if you ask the same question, the results might be different, and there are several ways to control that with temperature settings, stuff like that. But in general, it's really about take a look at the results, and and test it, obviously, to find out if that's really something that helps you. So that would be the default way of doing things, right? So another way, and that's thanks to Doug Fink and his PowerShell AI module, is that you start using it directly in your console. So what does that mean? So there is a module out there created by Doug Fink and a number of contributors from the community. It's called PowerShell AI. So you can install it directly from the gallery. And what this allows you to do is use PowerShell to communicate with ChatGPT. So it's not using ChatGPT to talk about PowerShell. It's about using PowerShell to communicate with ChatGPT. And what that, for example, means is you could use, there are a couple of commandlets, and it's actually growing quite fast. So there is, I feel almost every day there's a new version coming out of the module. So thanks, Doug, for doing all the hard work here. And by the way, if you want to learn more about the PowerShell AI module more in detail, because I don't have a lot of time in this session, I will also put a link into the chat here from a session that Doug did a while ago for our PowerShell user group, and yeah, I will put it into the chat later on. All right, so for example, there is a commandlet. It's called ChatGPT 3 completion, and this allows you to directly communicate with ChatGPT. So let's say if we take the same question or the same dialogue that we had just now about, okay, show me the top 10 PowerShell commandlets. We should get some results back. So here, okay, we have a plain list, which is great. And then we can say, okay, but add descriptions for each commandlet and 2 examples. Let's see if this works in this way. Examples. And then it takes a little bit longer because there's some more data that has to be processed. And then if we are lucky, we're getting some data back. And then here we get to the point number 7, which is because, like in this case, when you communicate with ChatGPT, it's all about tokens. It's not about words, it's about tokens. So how many parts of a word are you able to communicate with ChatGPT? And there is some default settings, and you can change it, of course. Say, okay, I want to have a bigger number of tokens. So the what I expect is that now it comes back with the complete list, which is actually the case right now. And now you could say, okay, that's great, but maybe I want to use that information. Well, number one, maybe you would also say, format this in HTML, or let's say in a HTML table, and use aria, and let's see what comes as a result. So ideally we get some HTML table formatting back. Let's see what happens. Okay, looks pretty cool. So now what we can do, of course, we can say, now we want to use this in a variable. We want to take this information that comes out of this process, and we want to write a HTML file with the result that has been created right here. And so that's the idea that I'm going to show you, hopefully. So we could say, now we have this information in this variable, and I want to store this in a file that's called, let's say, new result HTM. And if we go to test result, we see, is this the result? No, that's not the result. Is it? No, this is the result. Yeah, it looks like this. Okay. Okay, and it tells me font size 12 for whatever reason. I tried it before and the result was like this. So, okay, as I said, results may vary when you use ChatGPT, but I think it's a great way of getting data from ChatGPT, putting it in a PowerShell variable, and then do whatever you want to do with it. Like in my case, it was like storing it in a HTML file. And then, of course, thinking about automating that and using that in a scheduled way. Now, the question is now, okay, where can ScriptRunner come into this whole picture of communicating and working with ChatGPT? So one way could be you want to take this possibilities to communicate with ChatGPT and make it available in a ScriptRunner action, which is what we see right here. Now, what happens here is, let's say I can do, well, we can do something like this. For example, let's create a script to create a new Azure VM. Now, what happens here is, in the background, this is a ScriptRunner action that actually uses the PowerShell AI module in the background to send the data to ChatGPT, get it back, and present it here in the user interface. And I can show you a little bit more what happens in addition to all that and how that is actually happening. Because now, so what could be a use case? Like, okay, I don't want anybody to use ChatGPT all over the place. So maybe you want to block it in general, but you want to have one channel where people can use ChatGPT. And it should be maybe documented in the way of what happens here. So one interesting finding here is, so we just said, build a script to create a new Azure VM. And what did ChatGPT do? It comes back with Power CLI result, which is nice. But of course, we, in this case, would expect PowerShell to be used. Now, that's an interesting part because depending on what you're using with ChatGPT, and I will show you how that works now when we build this directly in ScriptRunner, is the context or the concept of having a system prompt and having a user prompt. Meaning, and this is when you're already using ChatGPT, you might be familiar with the playground in OpenAI, which means you could say, I want to, like this one here, I have this like the same prompt. I want to create a script for Azure VM. And as a result, what might happen here now, here it is already PowerShell, is it? And it's not enough data, so I have to again expand the number of tokens that I'm working with. What I want to show you here is that here on the left side, the system right now is empty, but this is the system prompt that is used behind the scenes, so to speak. And it could mean like, it could say like, okay, always use PowerShell. Yeah, use PowerShell. And always use splatting. And create a synopsis when you're building a script, for example. So these are all things that can be controlled with such a system prompt. Now, if I now go back to this here, this is obviously it's a more general approach. So what I could do is here, number one, I could say, okay, I say build a PowerShell script, and probably the result that will come back will fit that. And we'll come back with a PowerShell script, hopefully. We'll see. And I'm already seeing that I'm running totally out of time. So we'll see how much we can cover in the last 5 minutes, or maybe we do a little bit longer. So you can get some more information about the whole ChatGPT, PowerShell, and ScriptRunner scenario. So, okay, let's wait for the result. Now, while this is running, you might wonder why we have this webhook URL here in the configuration that you see here. And the reason for that is that whenever I am doing something here with ChatGPT, it is kind of documented in the background in a Teams channel. And that's done with a PowerShell function that is using a webhook that is kind of documenting who triggered a communication with ChatGPT and from which IP address. And that can also mean it's still running. Okay, well, while that works, let's start it again and start another instance, because the reason why you might want to use something like this ScriptRunner action, for example, could be, okay, I'm let's say create a script to create a new AD user, and then for whatever reason I'm typing something like finance data and I'm running it. Now the expectation would be that the idea here is if somebody is using something in the communication with ChatGPT, so someone tries to upload some finance data or some sensitive data, that you can control that based on, like in this script, it's a very simple example. It's a list of phrases that if it's being detected, the result should be that the communication is blocked. Let's go back here. Okay, so this was the example for creating the VM in Azure, and now we can see, yes, we are talking about PowerShell. So it's all about context, and you either set it as a system prompt or you set it in your user prompt. And so the idea of using it like in an action, like right here. So here, going back to this other action, you can see it says, okay, you're not allowed to use finance data in a chat interaction. Now, how is that done? And don't be afraid, I'm showing it in the good old ISE. Don't kill me, but that's how it is. So what happened here in the script behind the scene is that, number one, we have the OpenAI key as a credential stored in the background. We have a webhook URL for the communication with the Teams channel in the background. We have a blocked word list here. We're calling a function that I have configured. And then, if everything goes according to plan, we are taking this, we're using this get ChatGPT 3 completion and get it out there and get the result back. And we have already configured the max token configuration here as well. So from the configuration perspective, if we go into that action that is doing what we just looked at, which is communicate with ChatGPT, you will see that from the configuration, from the parameter side of things, we have here the OpenAI key, which is part of the secure storing of credentials in ScriptRunner. So obviously we don't have to type it here. It is stored in the credential store. And we have the webhook URL, which, of course, under normal circumstances, I will not want to make it visible for the user. So what I just put this to hidden, which means if I'm saving that and I'm going back to this dialog and I'm refreshing the page, what we should see as a result is that the webhook URL information is gone. So we're using it in the background to communicate, but it's not there and not visible. Now, getting to the next part, which is actually creating scripts directly in ScriptRunner. which is the next step where you could say, okay, I have this script section here, and here typically you say, okay, I have an empty script, or I have take a script from a library script from our GitHub repo, or I could say, here I want to create a new script. For example, build a script to create a new Azure VM, for example. So that's all that we do. Now here, the idea is that all the things that I really talked about, with like the system prompt, that we want to have a PowerShell script, we want to use splatting, we want to use maybe some specific information that is relevant for the way that scripts are being executed with ScriptRunner. That's exactly what happens right here. For example, you can have multiple languages for your parameter descriptions, which means if you're looking at this dialog and you're switching to Spanish, you can see that, for example, this is switching the language, for example. So these informations are part of the scripts. And so without knowing what the specialities are, in this case, for using PowerShell with ScriptRunner, you can just say what you want, and then the system prompt takes care of that. We have these param descriptions here, that and then we get the information for creating the Azure VM. If we do the other example very quickly, where we say create a script to create Active Directory user. Let's see what happens right here. Then again, we should see a proper formatted PowerShell script. So you don't have to type up use splatting. You don't have to type like create a synopsis. That is something that is being taken care of automatically. And as a result here, you get the data. And then you can start using the result and maybe modifying it. And if you have, let's say you have an existing script and you want to modify it, then also there is a ChatGPT integration as well. And let me quickly show you this as well. So if we go into a script right here in the web portal, into the code editor, and we could say, for example, I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't know, down here we say, okay, I need to do it right here. Sorry. We want to add a for each loop, for example, and you can say, okay, right mouse click, and you say add a for each loop, and then hopefully, yeah, we get the data here. It was not really placed perfectly here, but you get the idea. So one thing is, it helps you to create new scripts, so you're not starting with a white sheet of paper. You already have something that you can start with, which I think is really cool. And you can also use that to modify existing scripts by taking the information or putting the information exactly at the point where you need it in your scripts. And I think this is really helpful for everyone who's using PowerShell. It's something for beginners, for intermediates, for people who are very experienced, and maybe you don't always remember everything about PowerShell because it's so versatile. So having this smart companion, I'm not saying Copilot because it's, I think, overused, but having a smart companion that helps you creating or modifying scripts, or even, we haven't even covered the explain part, but I think we are already over time, because you can do this in the PowerShell AI module with the Copilot commandlet that allows you to explain things. Get a code and let ChatGPT explain what this code actually does. So it's also, I think, very important and very helpful for trainings. All right. So that was a very quick view on what happens with ChatGPT and PowerShell, and what we are going to deliver in the next release. So what I showed you with ScriptRunner is not out yet. So if you install ScriptRunner today, this is what I showed you here with ChatGPT is not part of the solution, but If you wait maybe 2 or 3 weeks, the release will be out there, and then you will be able to use this functionality in ScriptRunner. And I'm really interested to see what kind of ideas and scenarios you see this being helpful. And we are on a journey, that's for sure. So I think we are really at the beginning of what you can do with ChatGPT, but I think every day there are new use cases, new idea coming up. So, and as you saw, so ScriptRunner is also a solution that is using the power in the background of ChatGPT. Of course, so to order to use it, you need to have an OpenAI key. You need to have an account there, and then you can start using it. If you want to learn more about that, let me know. Get in touch with me. And coming back to us being a part of the community, there will be a session with a totally different topic, PowerShell, PowerCLI, and API and VMware management for our user group in September. And also upcoming, and I'm very happy to be able to talk to Bruce Payne together with my colleague Marcus. We will have an Ask Me Anything session on the 21st of September. And I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. It's also going to be streamed here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And yeah, so I'm very happy and for you that you joined this session. Thanks a lot for attending. And I'm just before we end, I just want to see if we have anything that is in the chat, some questions that maybe has come up. I don't see it here. So if you have any questions regarding the things that we looked at, and maybe other parts in regards to ScriptRunner, please let me know. I would be very happy to answer them. And with this, again, thanks a lot. And now here, okay, there is okay, I can see some chats here about ISE. Yes. Okay. Oh, and thanks, Doug, for tuning in. I hope I didn't say anything wrong about the PowerShell AI module. Again, thanks a lot. It was great. And we will have new sessions coming up in a while with other topics when it comes to how to use PowerShell and ScriptRunner. So again, thanks a lot. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.